Good afternoon. We are joined today for another episode of Data Stream Live by Ed from Sobirho. Ed, I'm really excited for this episode of Data Stream Live. It combines two of my favorite things: AI, data, and sports. So maybe just want to introduce yourself and tell us who you are.
Elliot, thanks for having us. And that's three favourite things: AI, data, and sport. Just to point that out there,
That's
to make
true.
things awkward.
Very true.
Look, okay, thanks for having us on, Elliot. Great to be here, and this is a really exciting video cast that you got going on. I set up Sobirho earlier this year after a career at Palantir Tech and a number of financial services firms. Having identified that sport is a siloed data hodgepodge of challenges across the fan, player, and business operations. So we've built four platforms: fan, high performance, community, business operations, to tackle the problems that sports organizations face today, and how they can actually use the latest, greatest technology and AI to improve their fortunes both on and off the field.
Fantastic. So, how did you spot that gap then originally? Was it a previous client and you just kind of fell into it, or did you have friends and family that worked in the industry? How did you discover that sports was such a siloed center for data?
Yeah, I worked with a well-known sports organization, helping design their data and tech strategy, and in partnership with them. And in that, working with a client, you always do research in the marketplace, and you
Mm,
discover that actually everybody's got this real big problem in sport of, well, they'll work with all these amazing tech firms, but they have to engage with all of the amazing skills that you need and the amazing people who have these skills to orchestrate the data into AI, into performance, into revenue, to actually get things working better. So I thought, well, hang on, there's a gap in the market there for a tech firm, business services firm like ourselves to fill that chasm.
Yeah. So, how would you describe sports' relationship with tech in general, not specifically data and AI specifically right now, but on a whole and historically, how have sports and technology have they coexisted? Is it something that's fairly new for sport?
Well, it's a good question, right? Because we've all known the AWS partnerships in Formula One, or the
Yes.
Oracle partnership with Premiership Football. Um, they've coexisted from a point of view that it's a great place to take your clients, right? There's a
Mm.
great sponsorship deal to do from a tech firm to get your brand and name known in the market through sports, because there's all eyeballs on it all the time, right? And there's all, key buyers eyeballs on the game as well. So if
Mm.
you can link the two up with, Mr. Mrs. purchaser at big organization A, come along and watch the football team that we sponsor, or rugby team we sponsor. It's a great relationship.
No,
Now,
absolutely.
how do those teams actually use the tech? $1 million question, right?
Right.
That's the challenge they face. Some of these tech, Oracle Cloud, AWS, great platforms, but not average Joe can use them,
Mm.
right? So you've got
No,
to
of
also
course.
buy in the skill set to use them, but also buy in the skill set to know what to do with them
Mm.
as well. So a lot of clubs, I'm not seeing, are really executing it as well as they could be.
Do you think there's a big gap between, like you were saying, Formula One and like Premier League football, but between top flight teams and sort of lower semi-pro, lower league team, maybe Championship, League One, League Two, but also in other sports where maybe they haven't got the same budget as Formula One and Premier League football? Is there a disjointed, you know, are they synced up, or do you think there is a gap there between the two?
Oh, there's a huge gap, right? If you
Right.
look at, there's probably a couple of gaps, right? Formula One's a global sport, right? May be centered around the UK with the teams that we have here.
Mm.
And they've got some amazing skills in their engineers, right, in the paddock, but also behind them, they've got some amazing teams of software engineers as well, who can help code up the different models and the different data sets to run simulations on the F1 car, right? And you need
Yeah.
those that level of investment to help with the performance on the field. Most sports teams are putting their money with the performance on the field. But then you've got a chasm between how technology is used in Europe to America and the
Right.
sport divide in between those. I think everybody looks at America as the kind of pinnacle of sports entertainment, in that, well, they put all the razzmatazz around the NFL, baseball, basketball, college football, what have you. And the women's game is flying over there, right? And setting new standards and new levels of engagement, versus over here where we're struggling to fill some of the stadiums with women's football. Although we are getting the anomalies of Arsenal selling out the stadiums and Chelsea selling out the stadiums, we want every club selling out the stadiums like they do for the men's game on a Saturday. We want the
Yeah.
women's to do the same. And you've got an amazing database of people in these football clubs. Utilize that to start filling out the women's matches, and the same for rugby as well. You saw a distinct difference in the numbers of fans in attendance, and then that's how you're going to start raising all boats.
Yeah, and you mentioned America versus Europe there. Do you think that lies in the differences of sport? Because when I think America, like you said, basketball, American football, baseball, or do you think it's money? Do you think it's a culture? What do you think goes into it that makes American sports so much more analysed than European sports?
I think the analytical approach to sport in America is historic, right? When you
Yeah.
look at something like baseball,
Mm.
that's been a statistical sport since its invention, right? Uh, RBIs, hits, uh, first base, get into. You can tell that I don't know enough about baseball to talk about, but it's all been statistical driven, right? And then the
Mm.
NFL is doing more of that statistics in terms of speed of the players, speed of the pump of the throw of the ball from the quarterback, timings, meters, yards made, etc. But then also the fan engagement side of it. So they're really taking, and sorry, NFL with wearables as well is just going off of the clock at the
Yeah.
moment, right? I think the helmets is getting more and more technology thrown into them, so you're almost becoming a video game with humans built in.
Yeah, I was going to say, touching on that, do you think that wearable technology has increased it as well? Because now capturing data is so much easier than it used to be. Instead of pen and paper, everybody capturing one tackle, 3 yards, hit and whatever. You've got this wearable technology now and sensors constantly gathering and creating and generating data.
Yeah, I think for the likes of you and I, who are data and sports nerds, and
Hmm.
deep down, I think a lot of people are data and sports nerds, but they just don't admit it. Um, the more wearables you can get, the more interesting it's going to become. Years ago, I
Yes.
read an article about the offensive and defensive linebackers, right? And how they have like 3 or 4 car crashes a game. These are 20, 30 stone men going at Olympic sprinter pace. Well,
Yes.
I'd be fascinated to know what the impact on a front row in a rugby game is, and
Yeah.
how many of them they take, what the impact is of that. Now that's been eased up with the change of the rules over the years, but still, it'd be fascinating to know that. Now you're getting gum shields in rugby, where if your
Mm.
head's thrown back hard enough, it will gather some data and say, well, you got to give Ed a HIA and bring him off. Well, we saw it in the Six Nations this year, where one of the Scottish players, I think it was told to come off the field, and he was like, "Well, what happened? I'm fine. There's nothing wrong."
Yeah, no, absolutely. And do you think that's improving the game, or do you think that's ruining the game, or neither?
And now this is a real controversial question, right? Because during the war in my day, we didn't have any of this, and but obviously
Yeah.
as the boys and girls have got bigger, faster, stronger, you've got to take into account what can happen to them, not just today, but later in life. And
Yeah.
so, from that point of view, it's definitely a much safer game to have these wearables to identify issues that may occur later in life. As we learn through natural growth and development over time, we'll learn more and more about what it means to actually get a shoulder to the head, and so you want to mitigate that today rather than tomorrow.
Yeah, I think there's loads of benefits, isn't there? Because it ties into performance, player safety, and like you were saying, fan experience. Knowing that a linebacker has been hit by a car 4 times in or the equivalent of in an American football game. For me as a fan, that probably improves my experience, but it also helps them for performance, but also health and safety. So it's sort of multifaceted, I suppose, this approach.
Yeah, but it's also sport is the universal language of the world, right?
Mm,
Everyone knows the Olympics, everyone knows Beckham, everyone knows Messi,
yeah.
everyone knows the Premiership, everyone knows the NBA, NFL. So it's the language of the world. And if you can go beyond that and go, hey, did you know those guys in NFL hit like 3 times a day on the another talking point at the dinner or down the pub with
Mm.
your mates?
Do you think it's making sports fairer as well in terms of I see often with football and rules are a bit inconsistent, whereas with rugby, if you've got a gum shield that says whether it's AI or some sort of data that says head injury assessment or no head injury assessment, you can't argue with it, right? Because it's the same for everyone. So you've got that consistency where I think a lot of fans get enraged when the decisions are inconsistent across teams, I suppose.
But you could have inconsistent data responses, right? You
Such
right
as
look at GPTs, right? You can go into one versus another, right? I'm not going to, we should all try it if we haven't, and go tell me the time of day, and they'll both give you a different answer, right?
yeah, absolutely.
And so you could use technology to give you that answer, but you may not get the answer you want every time. Is my point. So it does help from a initial find and looking at a sample of data sets and people.
Mm.
It may not help in the instance or the moment that you're going to get consistency. Look at football with VAR, right?
Oh,
It's VAR's performed amazingly during the Euros that we've got on at the moment,
yeah,
Euro 24. But Premiership season just gone. It's been the most controversial thing ever with
yeah.
teams wanting to get rid of it in the end, right? So you've got the same system being applied to the same sport, but two different events giving you different
Mm.
answers.
Yeah. So you're saying there can be you're sort of highlighting on the point that there can still be bias and subjectivity within data. It's not as objective as some people might think. It's not clear cut where it's this is it and this will always be it. Sometimes nuance and things can change.
Yeah. You could cook 100 things, and 99 times out of 100 they go perfectly. And that one
Mm,
time you do it different, you do the same thing you think, but actually something's gone wrong, but you don't
mm.
know what it is. So it's as much as we'd like to think it's the perfect solution, you always need a human in the loop somewhere.
You're a big advocate of the human in the loop, not fully automated.
Am I a big advocate of it? Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
yeah.
You need someone to press that button at the end.
Yeah. I think it's that context, isn't it, that a lot of AI and data systems miss out on that us as people just pick up instantly. I think it's hard for someone that's not data centered to understand that. If you get what I mean, like with Chat GPT, you think, well, I don't understand how it's got it wrong, but with it, because we have context, right? We can think past the data, I suppose.
Yeah, I think there's some aspects, and we've had them for years where a certain process can be, you know, turned into a robotic process, right? Move this
Mm,
piece of paper from A to B, put these numbers in it from this table, done. Where AI is being built now, right? And it is you've got people's opinions on it. So
mm,
you could have sports clubs now are using AI, and I was having this conversation the other day to help the fan and improve the fan experience in the stadium, right?
right,
And that could be getting to the stadium or being actually in the stadium. And I was having this conversation with an owner of a club about it, and they want the AI to be able to tell me where to go watch their football team play.
right.
And I said, that's great, but I don't support your team. So if I code that in, I just
Yeah.
say go to the pub and watch it,
Right.
right? Because you want me to come to your stadium
Yes.
and watch the game and buy a pie and a pint and a shirt and a hat and buy a season ticket and something else. But as a fan of Arsenal, as I am, so hope your watchers don't turn off now. I don't want you to do well economically, right? I
Yeah.
want you to do worse than me. So go home and watch it. That's the best place to watch the game.
Yeah, I think you touched on a great point there, which is if you were to gather a data set for, let's say, Tottenham, I guess, for example, let's imagine the club was Tottenham and you were responsible for improving things. Like you say, as you as an Arsenal supporter or you as a supporter, you might have certain biases or tendencies that aren't aware to you. So things that are important to you, you'd be capturing data on, but things that weren't so important to you, you might not be capturing data on, right? So if you love Arsenal and all you care about is them winning, you might look at player stats and you might look at wins and trophies and things like that. Not so much the average cost of a season ticket or a pie cost, or how does it feel to be in the stadium shop, or what merch is there? Because
Yeah,
ultimately you just care about performance, right? So it kind of shows how inherent bias, you don't, that's not something conscious. You're not making that decision. That's just, you're unaware of what you're not capturing, I suppose.
yeah, and perhaps we don't see it in sport with technology in that way, right? We
Mm,
see it in other verticals. Like insurance is a great one to think about, where you're assessing somebody for their car insurance, right? Are you
yeah.
being biased on their gender, for example, right?
Yes.
When you don't mean to be, but it's just that's what you're doing, right? And you're
Mm,
using the wrong data set to identify that. And so we see that in other verticals a lot more. Retail's another great one for that, and how you stack shelves and what you should put into the shelves, so it appeals to one
absolutely.
one sex to versus another sex, right? And so, yeah, it's now coming over into the sports realm where people are wanting to implement AI, sports tech, data tooling more,
Mm,
and haven't really thought about it in that way previously.
yeah.
And to my earlier point, it's not just software engineers you need the project managers, the business analysts, to be able, the data officers of the world, to start coming in and going, well, actually, what have you got here, and what should we be, what's this thing called governance, right? How do we
Mm.
build your organization?
Yeah, I feel like it touches on that sort of diversity and inclusion point in terms of how important it is for creating AI and creating data systems because of that sort of inherent bias that you have. Not saying, I'm inherently sort of racist or homophobic or any of these bad things that we're trying to avoid as much as we can with AI systems, but my culture, my upbringing, and everything, my life to this day has been influenced. And when I go and out and collect data, it's going to be from my viewpoint. So you're saying with sports and things, like you're saying, you being an Arsenal fan, you might want a diverse group of different fans that can all give you different perspectives on what it means to be a supporter of that team, so that ultimately the AI model is better, right?
Yeah, like you don't want to put, it is that DE and I, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to put your personal opinions into your coding,
No.
but it may happen, right?
Yeah.
And as an Arsenal fan, you wouldn't do that if you're doing a job here. It's your employer,
Mm.
right? And you're working for a Tottenham, say, right, in this example. You wouldn't expect somebody in your employment to do that, and that's your vetting and your process to cover that off.
So, how important do you think it is then to have that domain knowledge? And because obviously, data people, business analysts, ML engineers, all of those, they don't always have vast amounts of industry specific or domain specific knowledge. For example, you as an Arsenal fan going to go do a solution for Man United, how important is it for you to engage with people that are diehard Man United fans or run the club and are there day in day out, and having and baking that into the system as well? How important is that?
Yeah, really good question. I've not thought of it like that, right? In terms
Mm,
of how important it is to have somebody who knows and lives and breathes the organization. I've always looked at it as everyone should keep that passion outside of the office, right? And
mm,
water cooler chat, and their professional passion should be shown in their ability to do the data analytics, the insights, the coding, the information passing and communicating. So yeah, I think you have to have a appreciation of the organization you're working for, right?
Mm.
And understand where they sit in the world, of the industry that you're in.
Yeah.
But maintain your, your professional skill set and ability.
No, absolutely.
I
Well,
think just
well,
on that though, when you get most employees at sports organisations, I would say 85-90% are passionate about that sports organisation they work for.
right. Right.
That's one of the part of their paycheck, if you like, is to
Yeah.
work at their team, right?
Yeah.
They want to win trophies on the field for their team, and so that's part of their paycheck. And I think that's probably why you see the sports industry not paying anywhere near banking, right? In my background,
Mm.
but but other industries that are of a similar ilk.
Yeah, for anyone that's seen Welcome to Wrexham, for example, the passion for the club really shines through, I think, through that documentary in terms of people that have been working there a lot of the time just on a voluntary basis, but know all the regulars, all the season ticket holders, they know everyone that works there. Being able to sort of bake that into sort of AI analysis and data driven decision making across the club must be quite
Yeah,
beneficial.
and from a business point of view, that's a good thing and a bad thing,
Right.
right? It's a good thing because everyone's hugely invested in the team, right?
Mm.
And the brand of Wrexham. Maybe not the best thing because you're not perhaps attracting the best of skills to the organisation of who can do the best financial deals, who can do the best
Mm.
fan engagement deals, because you're not paying that much because you've leveraged the local fans to be your engagers,
Right.
your financiers previously. So it's a good and bad thing, I think.
And do you think that's why? Do you think it's important then to have a partner that's like new to it, like a third party, like you being from sort of like the London area, you going to Wrexham? I imagine you don't have any particular love for Wrexham, for example. But do you think there's an advantage there of having that partnership instead of Wrexham just hiring more people internally to be more diehard Wrexham fans in the club? Do you think there's a strategic advantage of having a outsider's data perspective coming in instead of just
Uh,
hiring?
the answer is obviously yes. Hire
As a
me,
third
and
party
then
partner, of course.
brilliant. Uh, hey, look, but by the way, I think Wrexham's beautiful, right? It's gorgeous
Mm.
over there. But the way we operate is we we partner with organisations to deliver very quickly, and I mean within days and weeks, we are producing new revenue, new fan engagement, new performance off the field, on the field rather. But then we're also looking to, and we are working with teams to upskill their teams, right?
Right.
Our platform is a low code, no code platform that is AI driven. So you can ask natural language questions of who's my highest 200 fans, right?
Mm.
Highest net worth 200 fans, right? And we use intelligence to find them. Or I've got a Brazilian player on my team. um, I know they've got a 20 million following on Instagram. We've got a load of Brazilian email addresses. Write me an email in Portuguese to promote 15% off of his shirt.
Mm.
Send
Okay.
it out to that cohort. So we're coming in to supercharge an organization to say, this is the latest, greatest tool set out there. We're also the on ramp for any future tool sets because we're orchestrating your data in a way so it's engaging both internally and externally. We're joining the dots between the organizations so nobody's siloed anymore. And there's a consistent view in the organization, and it's your team who are there, who
Mm.
are uplifting you already. We're just coming in as the rocket booster on the back of your jet.
Yeah, you're there to empower employees and drive them towards data decision making.
Yeah, because look, everyone, data and AI, don't let it fool you, in my opinion, right? In that it's only for a certain awesome skill set of individuals out in the
Yeah.
world. Right? They're the ones who are pioneering, the future next thing. Anyone can do it, right?
Mm.
If you've got a willingness to learn and adapt and change and be capable and take what you already know and deliver it in a new way, anyone can pick up, being a data analyst tomorrow.
Yeah.
Just need a bit of time and dedication to looking at different, learning things and looking at YouTube channels or reaching out to yourself or to me or somebody and just starting to learn and develop their skills.
No, absolutely. So touching on that, then I really like that story about the Brazilian shirts and having like maybe one marketing email that goes out, but then is translated and goes to different countries and people that speak the same language based on what players you have on the field. So can we talk about more about the commercial impact then of data and AI in sports in terms of the business, right? The boardrooms and stuff, the stuff we don't see. What's going on behind those closed doors? How are people using data and AI to drive, I don't know, brand deals, TV, rights and stuff like that? What's going on in that space?
Okay, so brand deals, TV rights, sponsorship. It, it's a really interesting world, right? Coming
Hmm.
from financial services into tech, into sports tech. Um, I find it fascinating. I find that the sports world could use tech in a much better way
Okay.
and data in a better way to drive commercial deals as well as engaging fans better. If I look at again, I'll look at sport as a business vertical in the US, the level of investment at universities to bring up the skills versus the UK, where there may be I think there's a handful of sports masters degrees, and but they lack the investment
Mm.
that they do in America, right? But also in America, you've got 300 million population, thousands of teams, be it professional teams, college teams, tier two teams, NCA or non NCA teams that want this skill set embedded in them. The TV deals, sports organisations operate in the UK, right? We're focused on there as TV sponsorship, right? Ticket sales, sponsorship, television rights, uh, ticket sales, sponsorship, ticket sales and sponsorship, flip and flop. Um, at the moment, whereas they've got this whole, well of data to
Mm.
go right. Let's go and do something out in the market, and it's not being activated in the right way. So with sponsorship, great example is I look at it in three buckets, right? You've got the bucket of fans as a sports rights holder, as an organization, of I just collect all this data on my fans, right? And I know I've got a million rows of data. Sponsor, have a go. Okay, that's okay. Then you've got the bucket number two of I've got these million rows of data and I send them information. That's it. Bucket number
Okay.
three, I think, is utopia. I've got this million rows of data. I send them information and I track the information they send back to me and I measure it.
Okay.
Sponsor, this is the bucket that you want to get hold of. This is the most valuable bucket of those three that says, I want to sell Mercedes Benz cars. This is my demographic. Here are the people. So your customer conversion rate is a lot higher, right? Because you're going to buy from someone you trust.
Okay.
Whereas bucket one or two is I'm just throwing you things and they're just going in your inbox and being deleted. So when we work with organizations, the shirt deal, for example, we were able to show an ROI within days. Whereas
Right.
previously they were waiting 8 to 12 weeks to see whether that deal worked. And the
Right.
reason for that was because they just looked through their financials. So are we getting an uptick in those shirt sales for Brazilian player X? well, no, that didn't work then. Let's try something else. Whereas now, what we're bringing to the party is have we connected the web link to the finances, to the shirt sale supplies in the retail data set all together to somebody who's purchased it? Have we linked it to their bank details? Yeah. And look, we can see a steady tick up in revenue for this organization.
Right.
So, or for this promotion rather. So, 2 3 month cycle to that 2 3 days week cycle.
Right. Okay. So it's making them more agile and responsive to fluctuations in demand and sort of leveraging the data they currently have to boost sales, increase revenue, and those kind of things. Do you see them being able to negotiate better with sponsors regarding sponsorship revenue if they were to leverage their data in a better way?
100%, because you can start picking out rather than just going for these big global sponsors, you can start picking locals, right? And saying,
Okay.
right, here's a South American sponsorship suite we're gonna package up for you. And every time
Mhm.
we promote out in South America, we're gonna have your branding and banner all over it here. That does happen, but not that much, right? It
So-
doesn't happen with the smaller organizations. You
okay.
look at championship clubs, they may have overseas players coming into their teams. How are people activating those overseas players? And South American players are a great example because they'll have fans who follow the player. So
Right.
if that player is at Club X, right?
Mhm.
20 million fans. When he goes to Club Y, those 20 million fans will follow Club Y.
Do you think then, touching on that, that's an interesting point that maybe not the player, but maybe his or her agent would be able to leverage data to get a better deal for their client in terms of what you just said, in terms of my client, player, whoever has X amount of following, we know that there's a high probability that they're going to follow him or her to this new club, which will translate into X amount for you. Therefore, I want another £5 million in the contract or whatever it is. Do you see that happening as well?
It's happening.
Oh, it's already
It's
happening.
it's already happening. So you're starting to see players not use agents in
Okay.
that they are using data to drive who they are, right?
Right.
But the majority of them are using data from on the field. So how far someone running compared to, or how are they performing compared to all of their peers across the leagues, right?
Mm.
And oh look, I'm the outstanding person. I'm the 10th person. When you bought me, I was the 30th person, right?
Right.
We've worked with a player that we've added the commercial element to, right? We've taken all of their social followings, all of looked at not just that, but also their media.
Right.
What has happened in terms of headlines? Where have they been shown in the newspapers, for example, on
Okay.
on the chat forums, to show you how many eyeballs are actually hitting this one individual, and then looked at what clubs would match up with what they're wearing, what they're doing, etc., to say
Okay.
these are the best clubs for you to approach because you can add X amount of value to them, and that helps them negotiate up another level. So we work with the player and actually removed the agent they used to have and just brought in the lawyers.
Right. Okay.
So it was quite an interesting dynamic. So we've spoken to soccer agents about this, and they want us to work more with their players at the moment. So it gives them, the agents are moving away from what people traditionally think an agent does, right? Of just I negotiate your deal and you're away, to
Yeah.
being more I negotiate your deal, I help with your data and your analytics, do I help with your financials, do I help with your future and your well-being. So it's not just the I think the Arthur Daly agents of the world have gone.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like players are now moving towards just being products. I know that they've always kind of been products that clubs exploit, right, for financial benefit, but now it's moving more and more where all their social media and, like you say, headlines and news and what they wear and everything is being curated to maximize how much money they can get from sort of club deals. Right?
Well, look at what happened with the Taylor Swift effect at Kansas City.
Yeah.
That's the prime example. how often did they move from the sports pages to the entertainment pages to the front pages?
Right.
That is the best example in the world at the moment of that.
You could see a future of players being encouraged to engage in romantic relationships for financial gain. Is that what we're suggesting?
All I'm going to say is I hugely admire David Beckham,
Right.
not because he's a handsome, gorgeous man, right? Because of what he did in sport, and he's translated that now to business as well.
Mm,
And you look at what he and Victoria have built, it's
mm.
just phenomenal, right? And amazing sort of experience there. And I think everyone should go, yes, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't follow David Beckham too much, but does he own Inter Miami now? And he brought over some world class players. Do you think that could have been a largely data driven decision? Because it was Messi and some of other world
Yeah.
known players from all over the world.
Yeah, well, look, when he signed for LA Galaxy, part of his contract was he got a option to buy a Major League Soccer franchise. Back in the day, it was valued at something like 50 million,
Right.
you know, and he executed that option with the help of a couple of business partners. That's now worth over $1 billion, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the greatest deals in sporting history. And then he was able to get Messi to come in, um, and that lifted everyone. That deal was amazing, by the way, because that was a deal done with Major League Soccer, Inter Miami, Adidas, and I think a couple of others were involved in it as well. And
Right.
that lifted the whole league, right? So when Messi was playing in Kansas, for example, tickets went from $50 to $250 or whatever it was back
Yeah,
then.
I've seen it first. I saw it firsthand. I was in Vancouver a few months ago, and I was speaking to some people that live in Vancouver, and they're like, oh, "We've got loads of Whitecaps tickets." I was like, "Who the hell are the Whitecaps?" And oh, it's our local MLS team. It's like, "Oh, why are you going to that game?" Just because Inter Miami are in town, and that
Yeah,
was the only. They don't go to any Whitecaps games. They barely watch it on TV, but because Inter Miami are in town, they're going to go to the game. So it's kind of lifted the entire league up.
yeah.
Which I find fascinating.
And I think we're starting to see something like that happening in Premiership football with
Right.
season tickets. I,
Mm.
I think there's been discussions previously, but with the data of who's attending Premiership games or who's watching Premiership games overseas, people are now starting to raise their season ticket prices with the view that the season tickets may go in a few years' time.
Okay.
And you may start seeing tickets priced at 250, 350 per seat per game,
Okay.
which is a similar model to NFL. Because if you someone like Fulham have now just blown the roof off of season ticket prices because they're the international club. Because people want to come over to London and experience a Premiership football team. We,
Right.
you're a lot of these folk want to go to Fulham, easy to get to. Arsenal's
Mm.
easy to, they're all quite relatively easy. But Fulham's the one that people are going to from an international background who are tourists over here. And so they're happy to pay 250, 300 because they're on vacation. They want to experience Premiership football. And, off they go to Fulham.
And I guess that's only been realized by capturing the data and analyzing it and coming to that conclusion, right? Otherwise, you would have no idea, I guess, who was attending your games or that was even a thing.
Yeah, and then this starts to get into one of my challenges that I see, right? Or one of the
Okay, go
challenges
on.
I see in sport. Absolutely right. You want to know one, if you're selling TV rights to China, how many people are actually watching the Fulham game actually in Beijing, right?
Yeah.
And then you want to link that up with are they actually coming to London
Right.
for holiday, right? So you've got to link those two data sets up. But then how many pies or beers are you selling at a game? How many shirts are you selling in the retail branch in the store? How many times does somebody go to the right beer concession? You've got to start linking up all of these data sets, and sometimes the clubs have given away their data,
Right.
right? So they're not in a position to access the data that is being generated by the fans who are consuming their organization.
Okay.
And so if you want food and beverage data, some of these F&B companies don't provide the data. Right? They just don't have that data or they're not experienced enough to bring that data. It may just be a small husband and wife gig selling coffee out of a van, right? Well, they get their little ticker, point of sale credit card tool, and that's it. Thank you very much. I'm done.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for an organization who don't invest in technology to understand the digital data footprint of their fans. So they need to have an ability to consume all this data, have the ability to link up all the data, and then make sense of it for recommendations. So what we're doing here is having our platform's amazing that it connects to any type of data set. We'll build a digital twin, digital representation, tell you what your fans are doing, right? Depending on what anyone wants to call that, and understand what they're doing every time, so that you can apply machine models and machine learning, artificial intelligence to say, well, what's Elliot doing versus what Ed's doing? Where could we upsell to one or the other?
Yeah.
Equally, and back to the ethics, you don't want to sweat every fan for every dollar,
No.
right? Because that will not make any fan happy. And
No.
also you'll bust the bank and you lose the fan.
There will be a trade-off, right? There will be something that you can measure or statistical analysis where you could find where that line is. Where is the threshold of, too much? Where every corner that they're trying to sell you something that it takes away from that experience, I suppose. But
And you'll
touching
stop
on,
you'll stop opening emails as well, right?
yeah, that's also true.
Yeah.
But touching on what you just said about linking it all up, I think from my opinion, that's where the real value is, right? There's so much you can do regarding ticket sales, there's so much you can do regarding player performance or sponsorship deals. But I don't know whether you agree, but the real value is bringing that all together, and it's almost like the sum of it, or the individual parts is greater than individual parts themselves. Do you agree with that?
100%, right? You want that, especially on the player as well, right? You want that full 360 of the player, so that you don't burn the player out,
Mm,
right? So that you get the best out of the player on the paddock, which is where the most value is going to come for that player. But when commercial and player communicate, crossover, sorry, is, well, when have we got a sponsors event, right? Who's coming to that event? Who's their favorite player? What position did they used to play? How do I get that to the players to say, right, I want a fly half and a second row of this international level to be at this sponsors event, right?
right.
Oh, they were at the last sponsors event, they can't be there. So you can plan it out a bit better, but
Okay.
communicating that to cross over the divide is also important. I feel like fans aren't, everyone will say, well, we treat our fans with the utmost respect and dignity and all of that great stuff, and they do, and they have that meaning and heartfelt passion behind it. But they want fans to pay money. They just want that,
Mm,
they want revenue from fans. They want to move that needle in revenues. Well, you can do that by growing that fan base, by giving them what they want. So don't hit 100 fans with the same thing when only 10 of them are going to buy it.
no,
Hit
of course.
100 fans with 10 different things that each cohort are going to buy. So you can only know that, to your point, Elliot, in that you can only do that by linking all the different data sets together.
Yeah, and that's where the value is, I suppose. So
Hugely.
let's talk more about then the player or the athlete or whoever it is. How much data in the top flight at the most elite level is being captured? I feel like they're now like horses, right? Everything's monitored. They're tracked within an inch of their lives. Is that really what's going on?
I don't know. Horses are they?
I'm thinking race horses. Race
From a
horses.
gambling point of view, yeah. But
Yeah, I don't know. I think racehorses. I think that they've got all sorts of devices telling them data now. What about players?
well, look, there's all sorts of wearables, right? But are the players being tracked and monitored 24/7? I'm not sure. Do the players want to be
Mm.
tracked and monitored 24/7? Again, I don't know. Are you going to wear your Garmin or Apple Watch if you're Erling Haaland to a nightclub that night while you're in your pajamas? I don't think so. Right? Are you going to
Yeah.
wear a heart monitor to the nightclub? Again, I don't think so.
No.
Glucose monitor, you've got to. Are they being tracked and monitored? Are they using data to the best of its ability? I definitely don't think so. I think they're
Right.
doing a good job, right, in using data. But is the doctor, nutritionist, physio, sleep, on
Yeah.
field, training, off field, etc., all using data collectively to get a 360 holistic view of the player? I'm just trying to think if there is a sport who's doing that, and I don't think there is.
No, all I can think of is sort of like Olympians, perhaps, if you're like an Olympic swimmer, and you always hear every 4 years how dedicated they are to the sport, and they eat, breathe, and sleep swimming or diving or athletics. Do you think maybe more in those kind of sports than sort of the glitz and the glamour of football and things like that?
On an individual level, right? When you look at someone like Tom Brady, right, the American quarterback, won 6, 7 Super Bowls, played until in his 40s.
Hmm.
When everybody said, "Oh, he should have finished 10 years ago," he had his own Tom Brady Limited, right? And he had the Tom Brady professional team around him, who the physio, the doctor, the dentist, all of them around them. Well, they're all in close proximity. They can all talk to one another, right?
Mm.
Um, could data have improved things more and had him playing for another season? Definitely. I'm convinced that data can extend the lifetime of an individual athlete. Um, it's harder to do that in a team sport where you can't have a team of doctors for every player or a team of
Right.
physio for every player. It's just not economical. Even though that's one of the biggest costs of a sports team is the first team support staff. But
Mm.
it's it needs to be collated and digested and understood in a data terminology here for them to be able to make the right decision,
Right.
right? And even on the Tom Brady aspect, the doctor would know everything about Brady, right? But
Mm.
would they remember that one thing
Mm.
that data would always be there to remember?
Yeah.
You could call upon to identify an anomaly of, I don't know, when he ate certain vitamins in a certain order, it worked better than if it worked in another order,
Right.
right? Definitely data would have helped improve things, but when you're just the individual, you're Tom Brady Limited, and it's a much easier thing to manage because you've got the team at the table all the time.
Mm. And who do you think? Do you Who currently owns that data, and who sort of regulates and all that kind of stuff? Is that, you say Tom Brady Limited? Does that mean that his data is retained by Tom Brady Limited, or is that retained by his employer, who's spent millions on buying him as a player and wants the absolute best out of him every single week, every single session?
Yeah, really interesting question because the data is so sensitive to teams, right? They don't want
Mm.
that in the public domain to tell you what somebody's how they're performing and what have you. Um, my personal view, right, is that the data is owned by the player,
Right.
right, and they should allow access to their data for the organisation they're working for
Okay.
because it's pertinent to their job.
Mm.
At Sobirho, we go by the rules of the organisation, right? We are
Right.
bound by GDPR and PII, but we are the processor of that data and controller of it in terms of when we take hold of that data, we define what we're going to do with that data to the letter, and legals get signed off in that respect. But for health and awareness, every player should have a data um, wallet, data passport to say what's happening in their life after
Mm.
the sport as well, feeding back into a generic organizational world athletics forum,
Mm.
athletes forum to monitor performance and consistencies. Things like American football have got, they've had the concussion problems historically. Rugby's got it now. Football's
Mm,
got it as well, right, with historical data. And it's only because what's happening to those individuals after the sport. Could you help out more? Could you learn more from a scientific point of view? Definitely. And I think that data should stay with the data in a passport way fashion, so that investment goes into the world sports organizations, etc., to maintain athletes after they finish their career. It's a big mental health is a big problem in terms of if you're playing day in and day out, and then
mm,
you're dropped from the team because of injury. You're not going to another team to play day in and day out because you
mm,
can't. So what do? There needs to be a lot of due care put onto that player, and data is a good way to help monitor and look after the players' health
yeah.
and well afterwards.
On that as well, in terms of injury prediction, in terms of if you did have access to all their health data and training data, sleep, diet, everything that goes into it, that opens up a world of possibilities of using AI to predict potential injury, right?
Yeah,
And then that you could take out insurance against yourself, or a team could take insurance out against someone that they think is at higher risk in the short term of immediate injury, almost like predictive maintenance in a factory, right? You want to predict when machines are going to go down. If you see players as machines, you want to anticipate when they might have a fracture, or a hairline fracture or anything like that,
yeah.
to put them out.
It that go you're going back to the ethics again here, right?
I think
Because
so.
you're now going and legal challenges. Because if I'm an
Mm,
insurer and you know that if I put Elliot out on the paddock, he's going to get injured, and I've got to pay out as an insurance
mm,
company, there's some negligence there, right? And
right.
so, you know, there'd definitely be a lawsuit associated with that if that happens. So,
Right.
but don't let that stop people doing that.
Mm,
You work with your insurance company, and I've spoken and advised a company somewhere, not in the UK, about how you can work with the insurance company using injury data
mm,
to insure that player, because you're going to have a player where you go, they're not due to having any injury, so
mm,
only charge them $1, versus a
right.
player who is potentially going to have an injury, charge them $100.
Right.
And
No.
on a given data point, agreed, we'll not play them. We'll pull them, because that's
Mm,
you'll see the anomaly of where we think the injury would happen at a case of a certain point in time. So let's
yeah.
pull. So
Yeah.
there are things happening in the insurance world and within sport to marry up those two things. But until that happens, there's a level of negligence that could potentially be, or an ethics that people could be
Yeah.
treading on, literally.
Yeah. It just reminds me of a story from Walmart when they were taking life insurance policies out on their own employees because they were anticipating that they were going to die soon, and the ethical issues around that. And I thought that was fascinating and obviously in America, not over here, you'd have a serious issue, but kind of reminds me a lot like that. You kind of know, if you've got access to all that data and you know the player inside and out and what they're doing, you can kind of anticipate when they might be injured. But fascinating stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's a challenge, right? Because of those ethics around it. Because you don't want to put a boxer in a ring knowing that they're gonna, suffer a serious head trauma.
Mm,
Again, you'll always get asked the questions, ethics around it. Data can definitely help around that, and the AI is there to help predict. But putting the human in the loop of that ethics and AI is key.
do you think as well it opens up in a slightly different way that data in terms of a different vertical, which is the health and fitness industry? Whereas how I'm thinking the future is, kids growing up wanting to be footballers train like Ronaldo, and sort of you've got access to his meal plans, his sleeping schedule, his train, everything almost in real time as he's doing it, or sort of recorded for an app or something as well, where players are also profiting off their own sort of health and fitness data and then selling that to fans and
There's definitely a commercialization opportunity here, right?
Mm,
Do I want to? kick field goals or penalty goals in rugby like Owen Farrell? Well, yeah, I'd love to. How do I do that? Right?
Yeah.
Only Owen Farrell can tell me that. You can't tell me that. So
No.
could Owen video himself, talk through it, give you a masterclass,
Mm.
in that? Could you build an AI Owen Farrell to give you those classes? Hell yeah,
Mm.
definitely. Could he then make a commercial model out of it? 100%.
I've seen it.
Are any players doing it? No.
I've seen it in golf a lot with AI, where it sort of analyzes your swing and then gives you recommendations on how to improve your swing. It's like I say, if Tiger Woods had captured all the data relating to every single swing and every single course he's ever played, to have access then to that data on knowing how to play each shot around certain courses would be, I'm sure, a huge commercial opportunity, right?
It would be, but AI could never improve how I play golf.
I
It would
think
be,
at every golf ever.
yeah, it's in every goal forever. I'd love to think I could wear AI to help me, some wearable to improve my swing. Never going to happen. No,
Yeah.
it's you could do it. You could build. How with the Olympics coming up, right? And AI
Mhm.
being so front and center. And I hope someone listening to this video interview, does this. Take every 100 meters final there's ever been, and AI generate that race, right?
Mm.
And where each sprinter would come,
Right.
right? That would be wicked to see, man. Or every throw, or every jump, or every bike ride, or Formula One race. Be really interesting. People would watch it.
Well, on that then, do you think AI is disrupting the gambling industry? Because Ladbrokes, Paddy Power, they've got so much data historically, and new, fresh data and insights, that do you foresee it being harder and harder to make any money at gambling on sports than it has been in the past?
So there's so many facets of gambling, right?
Mm,
It's everyone looks at gambling as I put money on, I take money out, right?
right.
And a one-to-one transaction. It's not that anymore, right? Because you could go down to a race course, put money on at the trackside bookmaker. I can phone up a bookmaker. I can do it on the app. So there's so many different facets around it, and just doing those three things, you need to be able to make sure all of your teams are talking together so that that Ed put on 3 bets, or he's
Right.
played 3 bets in a certain way, on whatever horse. And there's the point of view of, one, does that protect the gambling firms, right, in terms of
Right.
somebody ripping them off? um,
Mm,
because you can go to these firms now and they'll give you, like, oh, Ed, you lost that last race, here's another 10 grand to go and have a bet on the next race. And actually he won 30 grand from the bookmaker on the side of the track or the machine in the casino. So,
right.
but there's also a bit around, well, I need to know that Ed's backing the same horse 3 times in 3 different channels. So from
Okay.
a gambling and aware point of view, you need to be able to see these things as well. And also from the money laundering aspect of it and the financial crime aspect of it. So there's lots of different pieces of gambling to say how AI could be applied. So
Right.
everyone looks at gambling, not everybody, but some people look at gambling and go, oh, I don't want to touch that. Some of these are the smartest brains in the industry who should be touching that, to get involved, to make things better for both the gambling companies and the people who want to be involved in gambling.
Very good. Very good. Well, we're nearly running out of time. Let's talk all things Sobirho. Please, what is it? We touched on it earlier at the start, about an hour ago. Who should get involved? Who should contact you? All of that.
Yeah, so we work with sports organisations, and I
Okay.
say organisations because it's not just Premiership football teams, rugby teams, international teams. It's people who are delivering sport to the community. So, and we're working with a community sports network in the States at the moment, right? So it's how you can uplift sport as a thing of good greatness out there. So we basically take any data set, right, and we consume that video data, structured, unstructured. We consume this into an ontology, digital twin, digital representation of your business, and give you some outputs from that, right? But
Hmm.
that's not where it stops, because a lot of great companies out there can do that. We then apply actions and decisions that you should take, capture that in our platform, and feed it back into your original data to make the next action and decision better. So you're always constantly learning. And we're
Okay.
there to help sports organisations, and this is Premiership football and rugby now, and national teams, that improve data for disadvantaged backgrounds.
Okay.
So if you think that you're in an area that's deprived and doesn't have the abilities or the skills, and you want to give something back to the community, let us work with you and partner with you. And we bring in our partners and our network, right? And say, let's have a data for Girls Day, a data for the community day, and let's use data and AI to make everyone better.
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
And so we're trying to do that as well as a bit of a philanthropy kind of approach to it. The type of people we've got here are vast, right? In terms of, we've got some amazing engineers, we've got some graduates straight out of college, we've got people from a marketing background, a sales background, but they've all got two passions. They're all data nerds, right? And no matter what the sport is. So get in touch, and we'd love to hear and have the conversation. And if we haven't got a place for you today, we've got a place on the bench for you, in a sports analogy there. And let's bring you into the field when we're ready to kick off the next second half.
Fantastic. And before we finish, I know you're a young company, but have you got one key case study that's like the standout that you've had a significant impact on that you want to share?
We're not one for telling organisations, so we're going to leave organisations off. But we're
No, of
working.
course.
We are young, right? So we haven't got 1,000,001 to talk about, but we're working with a football team to uplift their female fan engagement.
Okay.
And we've
Fantastic.
already seen an impact from doing that in the short couple of weeks we've been working with. Super pumped about what we're going to achieve at this club. We will make a bit of noise about it when it happens, but I'm not going to ever be one to say, yeah, look at us, we did this at this club. It's not our MO, right? It's just going to be, we'll be pleased with more bums on seats at the women's game. And just on that, women's sport is primed for tech innovation.
Right.
So all those new tech firms out there who want to work with Premiership soccer teams, football teams, NFL, rugby, national teams, focus your efforts on the women's game, because you'll still make the same achievements as you would in the men's game, but you'll do more impact in the women's game.
Right. That's great. So AI and data for good. I like it. And
Yep.
Sounds fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Really enjoyed the last hour talking about AI in sports. I think we got sidetracked a little bit with certain sports and things. Regarding the baseball, if anyone's not seen Moneyball, I would highly recommend it for data and sports, and might improve your baseball knowledge a little bit, Ed. But no, thank you very much for coming on. And finally, from me, anybody's interested in how you can develop a smart, interconnected organization, please visit our website and get in touch. You can book a meet with me for 45 minutes. We can have a chat similar to this without being recorded, and we can get to know more about you and your business and how to get you to the AI and data. I keep saying future, but I think it's the present really at the minute. So yeah, please get in touch. And again, Ed, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Elliot. Great to talk to you again, man.